Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome to Tag Tuesday. Today's tag is the Recluse book tag. It was created by Matthew over at Mayberry Books and he was kind enough to tag me. There are four pretty straightforward prompts here, so this should go really quickly, but they were really kind of interesting, and I thought a more nuanced take on some of the other tags I've done about what books we would want to have with you essentially, at the end or on a desert island, that kind of thing. These are books kind of about being a recluse and reading. So here we go. Thank you again, Matthew, for tagging me. Prompt number one is if you could spend time in an ultimate bookstore or had an hour to spend in your ultimate bookstore, what would you look for? What section would you go to? To be honest with you, I would go straight for the Balzac. According to Matthew, everything I want would be found in this bookstore, and therefore I could find a hardback complete edition of The Human Comedy by Honoré de Balzac. By the way, I know this exists because Amy from the channel From the Dusty Shelf found this exact thing I'm looking for in a used bookstore in Canada, where she shops frequently. As a matter of fact, I watched Amy's video this morning, and she and I have a lot in common when it comes to bookstores, so I'll leave a link to her channel and her tag video for this down below. But in addition, another thing that Amy and I have in common, not that she wanted to buy the Balzac, even though I think she might have, but what we do have in common is that I'm not one of those people who's going to spend all day in a bookstore. I do love going to bookstores. I do love browsing and shopping, but I generally speaking look in specific areas. I would go to Balzac first. I would look through the fiction/literature section. Second, I would go look in biography. Third, and I would go look in just kind of the history section. Probably fourth, and I would do this relatively quickly. Anytime I go to a bookstore, I usually have something that I'm looking for. It can be a vague thing, it can be a list of things that I keep in my phone, but there's something that I'm looking for. There's a reason that I'm going, and part of this is because I am a recluse and I hate to get out of the house, and I don't just usually leave the house for no good reason. So if I'm going to the bookstore, I'm going because there's something I'm looking for, there's something I'm interested in, there's something I've been reminded of. Okay, so that was prompt number one. Prompt number two, who is your favorite reclusive character from a book? I'm going to go with Raimundo Silva, the proofreader from Jose Saramago's The History of the Siege of Lisbon. He essentially lives alone. He's a dedicated bachelor. One of my favorite things about him is that he has a cook and a house cleaner who comes in for him, I believe, maybe once or maybe twice a week, and she makes this delicious sounding kind of bean soup, which he then proceeds to eat for the rest of the week. And he kind of eats the same thing all the time. He does go out, but mainly to look around, not necessarily socialize. And in the novel, The History of the Siege of Lisbon, proofreader Raimundo changes one word, or he adds one word to a historical text that he's working on, and that word is not. And that sets off a chain of kind of historical events which change history, change the present, change the past, and create kind of a change in his own life as well. He's probably my favorite recluse that I thought about when I was thinking about answering the prompts of this tag. Prompt number three, if you had a week to read with no other obligations, no work, no nothing, no booktube commitments, no read-alongs, no buddy reads, what would you read? The first thing I thought of was this book, The English and Their History by Robert Toombs. Saw this book over at the Ghost Readers channel sometime last year. He was going to try to read it, and initially this was going to be my mammoth for March of the Mammoths, but when I realized I could combine my mammoth with the Irish read-along by reading the collected stories of William Trevor, I put this aside for the summer. This is one of those things that I really want to read, and given enough time and few enough distractions, which would probably mean that I have to stop arguing with people on Twitter and other things like that, then this would be what I would read. And then prompt four was, what book would you probably read? If this is the book you intend to read, if this is the book you intend to read, what book would you probably read? Well, I don't want to sound superior, but I usually read the books I want to read. But sometimes I get distracted not usually buy another book unless the book I'm reading is really unsatisfying, but I have a feeling if the week I had to read was this week, and I had committed to reading this because this is the book that I would cloister myself away with for a week and read, I might be distracted by the fact that I got the new Louise Erdrich book, The Night Watchman, which despite its awful cover, I would be tempted to read. And then if I could stay off social media, and if there wasn't a sporting event on TV that I wanted to watch, which would distract me from my reading, then I might also start rereading the Patrick O'Brian, Aubrey Maturin novels, starting with Master and Commander, which are my favorite series of novels and great historical fiction. So there you go. That's the Recluse book tag. I'm going to tag some people. So here we go. Here are the channels I'm tagging. Old Blues Chapter and Verse. Jason, I'm tagging you. Sonia at An Enthusiastic Reader. Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics, because you're my tag brother, and we tag one another back and forth on these things. One Book, One Review. I'd like to tag you to do this tag, because I think you'd have some interesting answers. Book Nerd TV. Also, I want to tag you to do this. And then finally, Dostoevsky in Space. I'm sorry I forgot your first name, but I also want to tag you to do this because I noticed in your latest video you were doing a lot of kind of reading, theological reading, and so I'm kind of interested if that's what you would do reclusively. And maybe you already are doing. Anyway, there you go. Those are my answers to the tag. Those are the people I'm tagging. Again, thank you, Matthew, for coming up with this really cool tag and for tagging me. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.